Seems. Morning, Steve. How are you?
I think it's raining every time we have meetings.
Has it been?
Starting to feel that way.
I feel
At least it's not snowing.
it's always dreary.
She's walking.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Well, you just, no, I'll bring it. No.
Yeah, just keep it. No, it's fine. I bought it for that.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming. Happy New Year. Lively crowd. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good morning, everybody. I'll note that all board members are present today on the 18th of January. And I'll move to approve the minutes from the December 14th, 2022 and December 22nd, 2022 board meetings.
I'll second the motion.
Any
I wasn't-
questions?
I wasn't here for the one meeting on the 22nd, so I'll be abstaining from that.
Okay, if the minutes will reflect that, Mary, thank you. Any other question or comment? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. And I'll move on to acknowledge Secretary of State Directives 2023-01, the United States Election Assistant Commission Administration and Voting Survey, and the 2022 Annual Expense Report, as well as Directive 2023-02, which is instructions regarding the examinations of a petition to a former minor political party. If there's a second.
Second.
Any question or comment about those directives? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. And on to the vouchers.
Oh, I could have a
Yes.
question just in terms of directives. Do we expect to receive a directive about House Bill 458 photo ID requirement and all of the now shortened processing times that we will have? I know that everybody's still deciphering what the legislation means, but we had a good kind of conference, and large and small counties are raising an issue now that this law now creates a shortened time for us as elections officials to process ballots and for voters to cure and errors. And so I just want to make sure that we, once everybody gets up to speed about what the impacts are, that you report out to us if we don't know that yet, so we can alert the voters and manage expectations. So
Yeah, we most definitely anticipate at least one, if not multiple directives coming from the Secretary of State's office on it, because there's a lot hitting on all different things from photo ID, provisional process, drop boxes, it's all in there. And you're correct, at conference, Jeff Hodby, senior legal counsel, spoke a little bit, but, and I talked to him in a hallway conversation, and he's still trying to digest and figure out, but it sounds like even within the Secretary of State's office themselves, they are trying to come up with agreement because there's differing point of views with that and exactly how much flexibility maybe in the formatting of a form versus keeping it as is, and what can be done for May versus beyond. So we have a little bit of anxiety around that because we want to know, because we need to start training poll workers in short time, but we definitely will push out to this body updates, but then we have to have a whole education plan for the public.
yeah, one other thing, if I could, I mean, we did have a really great elections officials conference. I thought there was a lot of really good information shared. I did have a chance to actually speak with Secretary LaRose because we've been seeing those reports about all of the fraud, 630 cases of voter fraud. And I had been trying to find out how many cases were in Cuyahoga County, if any. And I think I had sent in requests, at least a few requests. So actually I went up to him and you know, he was very gracious and he, you know, and I'm hoping this, I don't know if Heather's here today. He said he would follow up. He said the prosecutor's office would have any referrals that they sent. So I would like to be in a position to say, oh, those 630 cases were somewhere else, not in Cuyahoga County. And I have a feeling we don't have that many. He thought they were probably, if there were any, they were probably related to outside state voters. But we really should know the number of cases, if any, that are in Cuyahoga County. Because my point to Secretary Rose, well, hey, did we miss something? You know, how come that we usually are there's all kinds of tripwire functions and flags that we have here processing. So when I see there's 630 cases of voter fraud, I think we have a duty to figure out how many are in Cuyahoga, if any. And he was very agreeable, and I said he would tell somebody on the staff. And I don't know if Heather's here, our liaison is here, but if we could find out. Is it Rachel? Oh, I'm sorry, I don't know. I said, sorry, Rachel. If you could maybe follow up, we've tried with email inquiries, but it's important for us to know. And it's important for our voters to know, or know that we are doing a great job, or if we missed something, we want to know. I don't think we did, but maybe we did.
We have the circumstances too of them.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, absolutely.
So
Thank you.
just two sort of conference points, but thank you for that time.
Keep us posted, please. Thanks.
Question.
All right. Any other questions concerning the directives? And onto the vouchers, I have a question about the budget, but I'll move to approve the vouchers as presented in the agenda. If there's a second.
Second.
Thank you. I kind of asked the Tonys just why we're paying, I'm not upset about it, but we're paying for election custodial services from May of last year.
Sure. So regarding, there are 3 items on the voucher list, all pertaining to custodial charges in the Cleveland Municipal School District. Just as in general, in the code, public buildings, they are not allowed to charge us rent to utilize their locations as a point location, but the code does allow them to charge custodial fees that they incur for being a poll place on election day. And not every municipality, whether it's a school district or the city itself, passes or invoices us for those costs. Cleveland School District had done that pretty regularly, but in 2020, we didn't get any charges. 2021, we didn't. And then all of a sudden in 2022, representative from the school district reached out to fiscal and says, hey, by the way, we have 3 years worth of custodial charges. And we said, well, we're not paying 3 years worth of custodial charges. We've actually closed the books on the previous ones. And it sounds like there was a personnel change internally in their operation. So this is something that kind of fell through the cracks. So when this came to our attention in 22, Shankita and her staff worked with the school district to say, well, we can work on the 22 charges and get this taken care of. But then, there's nothing we can do on the former ones. So that's why we have all 3 of these here now.
So it's because they delayed invoicing us.
Yes.
We weren't going to go out and ask them
No.
because why would we?
Right, no.
So is this encumbered money from 2022?
So what will happen is, and Shankita could probably speak to it better, she did speak with our county OBM budget office liaison, where this funding will hit our 23 budget. However, they are aware of it. And if there is a shortfall in like our primary budget for 23, that appropriation will be made asked of council, and should not be any difficulties in getting that appropriation put forward. So that's how that's going to happen. Now, one safeguard that we want to build in is we currently have a simple contract that we send out. We work with Mark to send it out to all of our entities. There's a private location version and a public version location. I believe in the public version location, we will work to put in some kind of, for example, you must invoice us within 14 days of election day or whatever it may be in order to have something timely, because we have no opposition to paying timely bills that are supposed to be paid. But this was a surprise, and Cleveland schools are one of our more numerous polling locations, so we try to work with them a little bit. We understand changes in staffing from COVID, but there was no way we were going back to 20 and 21 to try to take on those bills.
Okay.
I had a follow-up question, just on that. The only question I had also was about these. Does the fiscal office now require that we adopt resolutions? Honestly, I don't remember that we've ever previously adopted these formal resolutions.
We
Have we
did.
did that? Done that
We did
recently?
about 6 months ago.
Oh, okay, I just don't remember it. And, okay,
So
we started doing it.
you're correct in that we never had to do them before, but with the new Infor system,
Okay.
and really one of the crux for doing that is that we have to provide certain documentation of an affirmative vote, which we then would have to wait for a future meeting, get our minutes approved, and that would go. And then what would happen is
There'd be a delay.
a bill would just sit there. So this is what Main County does, and Sean Keita kind of crafted. So
Okay, great.
Thank you. Any other questions concerning the vouchers? Hearing on all those in favor, aye.
All right,
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. And I will move to approve the preliminary approval of the ballot order for the May 2nd, 2023 primary election. If there's a second.
second.
Thank you. Any question or comment?
can I make just one comment? And that is that you'll see a couple spots on here where we have preliminary items. And that's because Secretary of State requires us 90 days plus out to do a preliminary allocation. So what we did for this time is we just kind of assumed a countywide election, knowing that our filing deadline is February 1st, and there is a probably decent chance it's not a countywide election. So when we come back to our final 30 days out, as long as it's not countywide, you will see drastically reduced numbers from here. But to try to meet the spirit of the rules, that's what you're kind of seeing today. Here and in a couple other items.
Very good. Thank you. Any other questions? Hearing none or comments, hearing none, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously, and I will move to acknowledge the resignations from and appointments to elected office of Brian Mooney, the resignations of Brian Mooney from Cleveland City Council, Deborah Turner from the Court of Common Pleas for the term ending 1/10/2025, and Patrick Kelly of North Olmsted City Council, member of council at large, as well as the appointments to elected office of Ron Van Kirk, City of Brooklyn, to Mayor Danny Kelly, Cleveland City Council, member of council, Ward 11, Joan Sinnenberg, Court of Common Pleas, General Division, term ending 1/10/2025. Latik Shabazz, East Cleveland City Council, member of council, Ward 3, and Tara Hannum, Euclid City Council, member of council, Ward 5. There's a second.
Second.
Thank you. Any question or comment? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, and now to the acknowledgement of the PO performance report for November 8, 2022 general election. Good morning.
Morning. Good morning, Marlene Robinson, Statler, Assistant Manager of the Election Officials Department. As you received in the packet, November 8, 2022 general election information, the SOS provides us guidance for the PO performance review. And there were a few procedural errors. And we did meet our benchmarks and accomplish our goals overall, but I do want to bring your attention on a couple areas and want to let you know that we are working on and will continue to work on throughout this year. When you look at the training statistics, please take in consideration that those statistics were for those, if they worked in May or in August, they didn't come back to train for November. So therefore the numbers may seem low, the number of people that are trained overall for this particular period of time in the fall. And then if you move into our opening and closing of the poll section, the printing and signing, packing the zero tapes and summary reports. The numbers, as you see, were not where we want to be, let me put it that way. And so I want to bring that to your attention because we are making some changes in that area, in that we are changing our next steps, packing the reports in a different place so that they are put into a different envelope so we can look at improving those numbers overall. So I want to call that to your attention.
Excuse me, Marlene,
Yes.
if I can ask the significance of signing these rolls. What, I mean, it's a security precaution, correct?
Yes, it is. And we ensure that we have a balance of parties that are reviewing the tapes. And there's some signatures along there, and then we capture those and review them when all the reports come back to make sure that each location does have those signatures, did complete a report, so we know they completed the ballot counting, closing of the polls and so forth.
And the tapes show how many people had voted at the
Correct.
location.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Then the other, I want to call your attention to open and closing of the polling locations. Part of that, we are also looking at doing some other procedures with opening and closing as far as we do monitor from here, from our precinct central system, along with putting some new things in place for the closing of the polls when we do ballot counting and our training procedures.
Just another comment too. I know I appreciate you kind of highlighting the areas that, you know, we need to focus on. What are some of the thoughts that you had those about enhancing the printing, signing, and packing of zero tapes and summary reports? Is that a training issue primarily, or?
Part of this training and part of what happens at the location is the reports are printed and then the reports are placed in a gray ballot box, returns here. Then those reports are all dumped into a box. It comes back to us. We then have to divide them, locate each one for each location, sort them and reconcile them. So the proposal and that we're moving forward in this year is we have an ECB reports envelope to actually take the reports of location, put them in the envelope that identifies each location already. So they come back here, it's easier for us to retrieve, review them, and kind of know what's going on in the locations.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And then also want to call your attention, because obviously something was mentioned earlier, the impact of House Bill 458 will be incorporated into our training procedures in identification, anything like that. It might need to be updated and changed. And also wanted to call your attention, and this is in regards to provisional. And so we just wanted to let you know the provisional process, we are reviewing and implementing some changes there based on recent language that has changed with House bills that have come up. And then finally, if you notice in the performance categories, a highlight in both performance categories and provisional process, we're kind of maintaining our level. If you notice from November 2020 with comparables, November 2021, November 2022, we went from overall score in 2020 of 1.35, 2021, 1.15, and this year we're back on the upswing, 1.27. So looking to move in the right direction and stay consistent. We have some areas that we do stay consistent in, and we're bringing back the reporting issues, no ballot counts. All those are also monitored here from Precinct Central. So that kind of helps with that.
Similarly, when you say, when it says that 130, in terms of properly issuing provisional ballots, 136 locations had one or more provisional ballots rejected due to PEO error. I mean, this is official error. That's 47.5. That seems like a high number to me, based on, you know, election official error. But what does that really get to? I mean, is that the same number that it's always been? Am I understanding that? It just seems like.
It's pretty much the same number. If you look at the chart below that,
Yeah.
it shows the comparables from year to year, pretty much the same, and it could fall into any one of those categories.
Okay.
It could be no name, the address is missing, or one of those things that might be missing on the information on the envelope.
So why is it due to PEO error? I mean, missing ID wouldn't be PEO. I'm not understanding why it's.
So there's no printed name. We have a template that they use, an overlay for the envelope. You're supposed to review that envelope before the voter leaves,
Oh.
catching any errors that might happen if they didn't sign it, they didn't put an address, and they're supposed to capture those things to reconcile, so that we do minimize those errors.
So these are, you know, our errors. So our election official didn't catch the fact that there was no printed name.
Correct.
That was missing ID, no signature. Okay.
Correct. On the
Very
actual
good.
envelope.
The voter had an error, and then we didn't catch
Right.
the error.
Exactly, got it. Okay, okay.
And these are ones that we believe are, they're catchable, because of the tool, because of the overlay, if they go ahead and look. Now, that number is scary, 47.5. But then when Betty does her piece on actually valid and rejected, definitely we're nowhere. We still have, I think, well over 90% acceptance rate on provisional, so, but definitely
So we want to
something
improve our
to
poll worker
focus on. Yeah.
performance.
Correct.
So wrong precinct, wrong location, though, that could be our error. Is that it? Or
Yes.
The PEO's error, it's not the voter's error necessarily.
That's correct.
But I thought the electronic poll books would fix that problem.
Yes. So they're wrong precinct wrong location should be avoidable. And the person, as long as they use electronic poll book correctly, it'll pull up and it'll tell you this is where you're supposed to be,
Right.
and
And print
print
it
a
out.
ticket to
Right.
give it to them.
Right.
Now, there might be a few instances where the person is just adamant because they walk in the door at 7:27. However, there is a sticker, a form, that if that person is just, nope, I'm not going anywhere else, then we can fix that, and that takes it away from being a poll worker error. It's the same, the person was just, we'll say stubborn, and didn't want to go when we needed to, but
Or
that doesn't
didn't have
happen.
time,
Yeah.
decided they didn't have time or whatever.
Right, they'd rather catch the ballot there, even though they knew it was wrong, than knowing that they couldn't get across town in 3 minutes before the polls closed. But it doesn't happen a whole lot.
So, but we could be missing that. I mean,
Right.
our POs may not be affixing that label when they should be affixing it.
And ultimately, the,
We do a precinct lookup, and that's at the location, and put the person's address in to direct them, yes, to the correct place. We do get the tape. Sometimes the person goes to the correct place, or when they get to the next place, if we have an error and we're not catching it, that, oh, this person's not supposed to be here, then yes, we mix it.
and the label is designed to officially be used when the voter is in the correct location, but refuses to go to the correct, get the correct precinct ballot. We asked our poll workers to go ahead and fix it, whether just to document the fact that the person was in the wrong location or refused to go there. So it just shows the fact that the poll worker did attempt to do their due diligence in that scenario.
I'm sorry, was there some, I just had another question on, so, you know, when I look at this, I mean, was there an overlap of problems like at one or two locations? So, no, were there like one or two or three like trouble locations where we had multiple issues here? or-
No, in
Okay.
reviewing back previous years, like you see, there was a pattern, and there was
Okay.
one particular location, there was not.
Okay.
And then even looking at some of the areas, like two locations, including the old office,
Right.
there's nothing that's consistent that shows it's in one area versus another area. In Strongsville, Cleveland, there
Sure.
are various areas, so it hasn't been a pattern, but we did look to see, identify if there was something going on like that.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
I do want to add, Marlene, do you have some more? Regarding this provisional process, this is something that will be interesting to see what happens going forward with this report, because House Bill 458 definitely impacts provisional process, where prior to that, an individual could go into a poll place, and by putting the last four of your social security number, or if they happen to know their driver's license number, they could write that on the envelope, and that would be considered valid ID for the purposes of provisional voting. That changed. Now a person must show photo ID at the poll location. And then not only do they show it to the poll worker, then I think they have to report down the ID number onto the envelope. And then, as well as these other items that need to happen. If that, and so one item is that we're waiting on the Secretary of State. The provisional envelope is actually a Secretary of State form, but it's a form that's affixed on an envelope. Those are gonna have to be redone. So for example, we have about 70,000 of those in stock now that will be no good. So we will either have to try to immediately go to print to replenish those, or come up with some workaround with a sticker to get through May, you know, all depending on timing of when we get information and what we know to be able to do that. But this ID piece will definitely be a training piece. It'll be a new piece, and they will do a good job. However, we're dealing with the human factor, and some out of force of habit, they won't do that. And so I think we'll probably have a bumpy road at the start, even though we will train it correctly, and we'll stay on that and try to make improvements as we lead up to the presidential. But in this instance now, when an individual, if they aren't able to show their ID there, they can come down to the board, and they can show ID. Used to be a 7-day cure period, post-election. Now it's 4 days. And so I would anticipate we would have, quite honestly, we have 0 people come down. Now there will be more of a need for people to come down, because they didn't necessarily have to come down before, because most people do know the last 4 or so. This will be a little bit different. So it'll be interesting to see how that happens. They don't come, and then I guess that is a reason for rejection of an provisional
Yeah, it's
envelope.
concerning. It's just been so concerning from a training standpoint, from a voter disenfranchisement issue. I mean, we have to have enough time. I mean, maybe we can be pushing for, you know, I know it's hard, especially if there are different interpretations of the law, but we need to be pushing folks to get us some definitive answers as quickly as possible, so that we can educate our poll workers and, figure out what the appropriate training is. And then there needs to be some voter education about it too. So very concerned about it. Just making sure we have enough time to address the new changes. So.
All right, any other questions or comments, please?
Just a comment. I've worked the voter systems table, which handles the provisionals. And it is very confusing even for the voter, but I think we need to emphasize to managers to have competent, it's supposed to be the deputy. From the conference we're at, I don't know what happens in all the locations in our jurisdiction, but they talked about a lot of these, they pass, the deputy just passes it along, passes it off to somebody, kind of dumps it. But my experience is you got to really corral these voters. You got to keep them near the table. You got to use the template. I mean, you got to really kind of, you're supposed to be voter assistance table. So they do need a lot of assistance to get all these I's dotted and T's crossed. And what happens if they don't take the lookup ticket? Do those disqualify those?
No, that was just a reconciliation for us.
I understand. That was
No,
just for my own
No.
information.
But I will take into consideration what you're mentioning as far as reinforcing the deputy being present at the table in our training.
Yeah, because they're, you gotta keep an eye on them. We would set up one booth near the table to keep an eye on them, to make sure they put the ballot back in the envelope, bring it back to us, you seal it, but bring it back and I'll do a final check. Make sure, you gotta be diligent in that job. There's way too many mistakes.
You are a model.
You should clone
You
him.
can bring me in. When you do training, when you do your training, I'll be happy to come in. Speak of my experience.
Any other questions? Okay, I'll move to acknowledge Ms. Robinson's appeal performance report. If there's a second.
Second.
Thank you. Any question or comment? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
I will move to approve to appoint not less than 2 precinct election officials for each precinct pursuant to the revised code section 3501-22 for the May 2nd, 2023 primary election. If there's a second.
Second.
Any question or comment? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Passes. And on to I will move to allocate voting booths for the May 2nd, 2023 primary election. The allocation quantities are based on social distancing and room size per polling location. A total of 4,567 voting booths will be allocated, plus 721 VS200 precinct scanners and 286 ADA automark voting units and 980 electronic poll books. If there's a second.
Second.
Any question or comment? Okay, hearing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. And on to any new business, Mr. Pilati and Mr. Callender.
Do have a few items that I want to get you up to speed on or comment on. First is voting equipment with Clear Ballot Group that we're working with. They also were at conference, and I think we all had an opportunity to introduce ourselves, chat with them, and make sure they understand that we want to keep this process moving and get it done. And so where we're at with this, and Mark, anything that I missed, please correct, but we have, on a weekly basis, we have an internal team that we've either been like Tony, myself, Peter, Brian, Robin. I've either been sitting down with Mark and the attorneys from Calfee talking about documents, or we've been with that same group talking with Clear Ballot and their team and their attorney on the back and forth. And so it is something that on a weekly basis, some form of conversation is happening. It definitely was moving along slower than what we had hoped, but I think from where we started with the initial contract that Clear Ballot, and they're required for the Secretary of State, they give out the initial version of it to their customers, and well, maybe some other customers said, okay, good enough. Of course, that's not Cuyahoga standard, and the whole document has been reworked. And I do want to say the 2 individuals from Calfee who have been working with us, Dan McMullen and KJ Lawler, I think have been a positive addition to the process and their knowledge of software contracts. However, with that, we're not done. And I think though we have a handful of items that we're close to the end. One set of documents is a master service agreement where there might be just about 2, maybe 3 things that I think we definitely can get buttoned up. And then there's an order, which has a statement of work and some other things with it. And I think there's probably a couple items there. Again, I think pretty close, and I don't think there's any more mountains to be moved. I think just kind of maybe honing in on final language. There's also a cybersecurity agreement that Secretary of State required all vendors and counties engage in. And for a lot of the customers, this directive came out after they negotiated their contracts for new voting equipment. So next time they need to renew, they'll have to embark on this process. Well, lucky for Cuyahoga, we get to be the guinea pig and go out in front. It was a lot of work working with the Secretary of State's office, but we basically came up with a version of the security agreement that working with the Secretary of State's office, we made some modifications. Then with Clear Ballot, they made some additional modifications that the Secretary of State has blessed. So basically, we have created a template that all other 87 counties will utilize. Of course, that caused time on our part, but I think ultimately someone had to do it. And sometimes it's nice to be in the driver's seat and sometimes not. But this time, I think it worked out well. Our initial plan was to use this Clear Ballot equipment in the May 3rd primary. That will not happen. We cannot, since we don't have a contract, we are not going to rush when we don't have to. So the first time that we'll use this equipment in Cuyahoga County, September 12th primary. And that might be in the vicinity of maybe 100 or so precincts. So that would be the first time that we would use this equipment. However, we want to get this equipment. We want it delivered. We need to do acceptance testing, which you take it through a battery of tests and ensure that it works properly. And then once that's completed, you provide notice to the Secretary of State, and that's when payment goes to the vendor. We want to have the equipment delivered and acceptance testing process commence and be completed by the May 2nd primary. So we will kind of do that on half of the house at Halley while we're executing the May 2nd election. As of right now, it's about 60 precincts that are in the May election. While every election is just as important as the next, the volume of that, I think, will facilitate us being able to execute both processes. And there's definitely benefit in us kind of getting that and getting it out of the way. So it will be busy times, but I think what will be good is to have that. We won't do any training of staff on how you actually utilize this equipment. That will happen after May. So we'll have enough where we know how to get it, accept it, and then focus on getting May done. And then Brian and other individuals on his team and across the agency will get the in-depth knowledge on how to execute. So in September, we can go ahead and be successful. Clear Ballot would be on site in September to hold our hand and take us through that election. As well as part of this process, we are pre-purchasing service days so that they would just go ahead and stay here for November also to make sure that we get through our first countywide election. Our internal goal here is to have this contract all done, agreed to by the parties by January 31st. So we can go ahead, this has to go to county council. They're actually the body that has the ability to purchase voting equipment. And we would hope to have it at the introduced at the February 7th board meeting or council meeting. And then at their February 21st, be able to approve the contract. The week in between, I would probably have to go and present to a committee meeting on the equipment. So that's what we're working towards at this point in time.
Maybe before you leave Clear
Sure.
Ballot, I just want to say conference was really a great opportunity because I did get a chance to go up to speak to the CEO of Clear Ballot. And while I said I was only one board member, I felt very comfortable saying on behalf of everybody that we need the contract done. And he was very gracious also and said there were, to Tony's point, there were just a few items. And so, I said our expectation was, this not languish, and we really have a need to get it done because we have to do what we need to do on our end. he was very gracious. It was a very nice conversation.
Very good.
Yeah.
It was, Annie Jo definitely had him in her sights, and she.
All very good.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, we actually went out,
Yeah.
you know, and chatted a little bit, so really nice guy. They're committed, their company's committed to doing a great job. We said we were comfortable, we went through that long process, but we need a completed contract, and he's on board. Apparently, he was at the last negotiation session and said he would make himself available to make sure he got it done. So just wanted to report that.
No, so that's good. And also Summit County, they also selected Clear Ballot. They will be implementing in May.
I'm glad we're not implementing in May, actually.
Well, with all these voting law changes, that in itself is going to be a lot. But we politely invited ourselves to go to Summit County when not that they should have their first truck of equipment. It comes in semis, about 200 pieces. Should be this week. We don't want to be there for the first one, but maybe truck 2 or 3. If we could come down with a group of our people, just to kind of sit there and be fly on the wall and watch when the truck pulls up, you know, how it's coming out, and because it's all been explained to us, but seeing is a little bit different, and that will help us in our preparations to be able to receive the 9 semis of things that we should be receiving. I was going to move on to cybersecurity unless there's any other questions on voting equipment.
No, thank you.
All right, cybersecurity Directive 2022-38 was published earlier on midsummer or in the early fall of last year, and that had its December 30th deadline, and that was enhancements to build upon the initial cybersecurity directive that we had from Secretary of State a few years back. Cuyahoga County was able to meet the deadline of December 30th on all items except for 4 specific. And it was not for lack of effort. And the Secretary of State's office has granted us an extension in these 4 areas. And those 4 are, the first 2 are some additional security cameras in this building, some additional security cameras in the Halley building. We've actually, the Halley installation has been completed, so we've complied with that. And the cameras in this building, we have, the vendor had told us by January 27th, that work should be complete. So we should be good on that regard. Another item, or a third item, and this is in no particular order, was a software backup device that we needed to obtain. We had it, but it needed to be configured and installed. And that has happened since December 30th. So we are in compliance now. We notified the Secretary of State's office that we're good with that device. And the last item is the security system at the Halley warehouse. There is a security system, there has been one, but the Secretary of State would like us to work with the security vendor, and that is a different security vendor for that building versus this building. Halley is the county one, and that is to kind of come up with an alternate partitioning plan of the zoning of the alarm system at that building. It's something that we can't do on our own. We are at the mercy of the vendor. We continue to reach out to our county contacts saying we need to have that plan. Once that plan comes out, I'm sure there will probably be some programming charges that we'll incur and we'll deal with, but we have to do what we have to do.
Do we select that vendor?
No, that is, that's a very large county contract. Does all the counties, except for this building, does all the security cameras across the county. As well as what they do in this building is we get on the elevator, that card strike.
Yeah.
It's that same company for there. So we're in a good spot, and Secretary of State, because we are always upfront making them aware, and they've already said, hey, if you need another 30 days, just let us know, not a problem, because we know that you're actively working on it. So we're in a good spot there. And then just a couple quick things, additional national change of address and supplemental process. We're dealing with 2 of those processes now. One is from 2018, and that will actually be the cancellation of records from a mailing that happened in 2018. In 2018, we mailed out just a little over 68,000 confirmation notices. And in that past 4 years, people who have not had any kind of activity, we landed a number of 12,890. Those are individuals that will be canceled. However, Secretary of State set a deadline, and they are not ready for us across the state to cancel. So we're in a holding pattern, waiting for them to give us the go ahead. As soon as that happens, we'll go ahead and pull the trigger and do that. So that's the 2018 process that actually has a cancellation. The 2022 process is now this outbound mailing of confirmation notices. It's two parts: national change of address, which is a comparison of the statewide voter registration database against the United Post Office's records of who's moved. So we have about 38,000 individuals who have notified the post office they moved, but did not update their registration with the Board of Elections. So they'll get a mailing. And then supplemental is those individuals who have not engaged in voter activity within the past 2 years. And we have just under 29,000 individuals who fall in that category. So we will, we have a deadline of the 27th to have those in the mail. We are working with a vendor because obviously those are large numbers, almost 70,000 individuals. We've gotten print proofs, and we should begin to mail these confirmation notices next week on the 25th and have them all out by our deadline of the 27th. So we have that going on for that process.
So just a quick question, when does the 8-3 exception end for this voter maintenance registration, purge needs? It's coming up soon, isn't it?
So April, they continue, so we usually get notice when we're in our official and unofficial certification directive for provisional processing, because that's when we that's when we're applying April, when we're doing the provisionals, and that's for, if we see that someone's not registered or canceled, we do that research, and they continue to have us do that.
Okay.
So as of now, we will continue,
Oh, okay, yeah.
which is good, but that,
I thought there, for some reason, I thought there was an end date to that, but. Okay.
you know,
Yeah.
you can speak better.
Right, there is certain mailings that qualify for the April exception, and that is somewhat of a moving target. So I'm not sure. I think what happened was there was some verbiage on previous mailings that the court found that we needed to make exceptions for those people within those mailings. But I think since there was a point where they updated the language and the window, the window of people who would qualify for the April exception will be shrinking. But
Okay.
And then just two more quick things. One of the things that you acknowledged earlier in the meeting was Directive 2023-02, dealing with form of a minor political party. There is a petition where I think it's called the No Party that they're trying to create. And so we have received petition signatures. Cuyahoga County share of it is 52,852 signatures that we need to review. We have a deadline of March 3rd to get that done. So I think we definitely will meet that deadline. We're working on that now. But that's something that we will continue to work through and meet that deadline. And then the last item is just city of East Cleveland. They're currently, we were made aware that 3 recall petitions were pulled towards the end of December. Their further charter, they have a 30-day window to turn those in, and that would be approaching. And so we will wait and see what happens regarding if those petitions are sufficient or not. I believe all 3 of them deal with council members.
I do have one question, just because it sounds like there's so much going on now for staff and a lot of work to do. Just a question harken back to the administrative, the directive we got on the election administration and voting survey. And I looked at the form, it seemed like, we generate a lot of this information, these are sort of operational cost information items and other things on that. This is not going to be extra work for us, is it? We're simply just going to be able to transfer that info to a new form. Is that, I see Betty and others maybe nodding their heads. There's so much going on. I just wondered if this was, just a way for the Secretary of State to capture this information more efficiently, or this is not more work for us to do, right? We already have this info.
Right. So it's info that we have,
Okay.
and it's something that we anticipate on an annual basis. The 2 pieces of it, the first part, Peter deals with the survey that's due this Friday, and it is registration numbers, number of applications, and vote by mail. So it's cobbling together the information. So it's not necessarily creating. Then the other part of it, though, is the annual expense report. And that's more involved, and Sean Kita and Patrick work on that. But what they do is they also, throughout the year, they kind of know that, okay, these are items that we're gonna have to report on. So you try to build a structure to make it fit at the end.
So it won't be a heavy lift to put this on the new forms and so forth.
Yeah, it's just, they do make some tweaks here and there, so
Sure.
now you're trying to figure out. It's always, you have, like, here's one category, here's another category, and then you have this thing here. Do I go there, or do I go there? Trying to get clarity on some of those things to report it, but they do a good job in getting that done.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Okay, it's called the no labels party, actually.
Is that what it is?
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
No party.
The no part.
No labels, okay.
No
All
labels.
right, then we're gonna move on to our public comment for today. And we have Ms. Stevenson, President of Council East Cleveland. We have invite the public to speak here at our meetings. You have 5 minutes to address the board. And I'll let you know when that time is coming to a close. Good morning.
Good morning.
Pronounce your name and address, please.
My name is Corinne Stevenson. I am a resident of East Cleveland. I live 15006 Grandview Terrace Road in the city. I came this morning to address the confirmation of appointment of the newly elected, which you confirmed this morning, the newly elected councilperson for the city of East Cleveland. And only wanted to say thank you, and that we will be requesting the minutes because we do need confirmation of that appointment. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Ms. Stevenson. I believe what we do is acknowledge the actions of East Cleveland City Council. We did do that this morning, and we'll get the minutes to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Reverend Pamela M. Pinckney.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Everyone in the room, happy new year.
Happy New Year.
Wow. I had come down here this morning just to say thank you for all that you all do. But while I was sitting there, a lot of things came to my concern. And one of them is the component of mass incarceration, which is across this nation, and homelessness. And I'm bothered by these things. Jesus didn't come to destroy the law, but to Christ fulfilled it. And I heard you say that there are 630 cases of voter fraud. The 8th commandment says thou shalt not steal. When people steal, they relegate to measures because of either they're just plain evil or they just feel like they have no other options. And I heard you talking about House Bill 458. And I'm really concerned with this mass incarceration and Cuyahoga County Resolution 2017-216, which not only creates more mass incarceration, but I'm really concerned with House Bill 458 and what I heard in this room today, because when I see the parties who support House Bill 458, I don't see any positive impact for we people of color, specifically women. And I'm bothered by that. I'm bothered by that tremendously because this country has a very high racist problem, problem in this country. And when I looked at the document that you had with the, the voucher summary, and I'm wondering what employment opportunities are available for these people who are suffering from this mass incarceration due to racism in this country. How will they get these jobs? How are the laws being written for people of color in this voting process? I see people are listening and paying attention because when I announced that I have a new party that I've had in place since for the last 10 years, the multi-partisan party, which is the People's Party, because without voting, you have no people. I see somebody came behind and wanted to do a no label party. That's their preference. I don't want my party to be a minor party, and I like to know what a major party is when people are voters. It's kind of like calling people minorities. I'm not a minority, I'm a person. In item number 8, I see everything on here but more ballot boxes. On item number 7, I see not less than 2 precinct election officials. What's the cap? What's the maximum that we're seeking for that? I hear 60 precincts in the election. How many precincts are available for the election process? For the cybersecurity, back again to resolution 2017-216, where the American Civil Liberties Union and the police chief of Fairview Park endorsed this resolution based upon the laws of 1800, when Black people and not only Black women, I'm a multiracial person, which in America, if you're 1/8, you got color in your skin, you're deemed to be Black. I'm wondering about this. Because in this resolution, it states that 2 cameras are to be put up in each city of the county to target people who have been incarcerated. And people were being sold slaves in Cleveland, Ohio on public square in 1800. So this cybersecurity, who is it going to be monitoring? Who is going to benefit from this? Who is going to prosper from this financially? I'm also concerned when I hear this about House Bill 458 about the poor working class people, the middle class people, the poor people, and even the wealthy people who choose to live right. Who benefits from this? We're facing some very serious issues in this country. Mass incarceration is only a small component of it. When I go out and I see a man sleeping on the street where their millionaires are building high rises, we need to be looking at who we're putting in these positions of leadership and who we're voting for in this country.
Thank you, Reverend Pinckney. Your 5 minutes.
I heard you. I want to have a discussion, if you all would have one with me, regarding much of what I see on this paper today. My phone number is 216-548-0820. And I want this racial tension to stop in voting and in this country. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend. Okay, Councilman Blopiak from East Cleveland. Is she here still? She may have left. She left? Okay. Thank you. Then that would be the end of the public comment. There, seeing no further business of this board, I will move to adjourn till February 13th. If there's a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Have a wonderful rest of the week, everybody.
Mike, you good? Good.
Yes.
Great. I love this.
Board in action.
Did you? Oh, okay. Oh, maybe I should have had my head down. So I'm coming up with
Sit there
that.
smiling.
Right. That's a picture I want.
I don't want to be in my picture too. I don't want my picture.